Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wiley Solution Walkthrough for Accounting Tools for Business Decision Making, 8th edition. This is problem 16A-4. So the authors are Paul Kimmel, Jerry Weingart, and Jill Mitchell. The question used in the presentation is copyright 2022 by John Wiley and Sons. Wiley, all rights are reserved for educational purposes only. Not sure what else would you be using it for besides educational purposes, but the video may not be distributed or redistributed without the express permission of Wiley. By the way, you can also use my videos to help go to sleep. It's also good too. The solution presentation is copyright 2022 by Bennett Tchaikovsky. All rights are reserved. The opinions contained within this presentation are those of Bennett Tchaikovsky and not the authors of the textbook or of Wiley. Okay, let's go ahead before we say thank you to the bus driver. Yes, Fortnite's going to sue me at some point, but we'll see what happens. So let's take a look at 16A4. So we've got over here, we've got Rivera Company. Has several processing departments. Cost charged to the assembly department for November 2022 total $2,280,000 as follows. Okay, so what I like to do, and for those of you who've been watching these videos, is that I like to use T accounts for a variety of reasons. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and make T accounts, and we're going to put the costs in them. So we've got a work in process or WIP materials. And we're also going to have a work in process conversion. That's not a van conversion, right? It's the kind of conversion where we're talking about the labor and then the materials. Excuse me, labor and factory overhead. Okay, so over here we've got beginning. My beginning materials account was 79,000. My beginning conversion was 48,150. My direct materials during the month were 48,000, sorry, 1,589,000. And then over here, my labor or my conversion costs and then overhead. So this is going to be 225,920. And then we got 337,930. And I'm just going to make sure that this adds up to the number that they said. And let's just add this up, and 2,280,000. Right, so right over here. So this looks good. Okay, so now what we're tasked with doing today is we have to figure out how do we get to move it. We've got to move it. We've got to move these costs right over here from work in process direct materials. And then we also have over here work in process conversion. So over here, we're going to come over here and we're going to make a finished goods inventory. Okay. So, and how are we going to get those, how are we going to get those through? It's going to be through the process of looking at it in terms of equivalent units. So the thing about most of the Wiley questions I have observed so far is that there's a commonality between all of them. And it basically, what it'll say is that production records show materials are entered in at the beginning of each process. So when we're looking at equivalent units for materials, we want to kind of keep in the back of our mind 100%. That's generally the way it's going to be, because if they're put in at the very beginning, they're going to be 100% complete as to materials. Now, when we're looking at over here about the 30% complete, that's going to impact our conversion. So let's go ahead and take a look at this over here. So okay, so production record shows that 35. So right over here. Okay, so my beginning, we had 35,000 units were in production at the very beginning. And then we have started. And then we have ending of 25,000. Okay. And we'll just go to kind of make this over here because we're dealing with units. Okay. All right. So these are the units, and what we're trying now to do here is we're trying to figure out the equivalent units. Okay, so because when we're looking over here at materials, okay, so direct materials, equivalent units, right, my beginning is going to be 35,000 at 100%. Okay, so this is going to be 35,000 at 100% under when we are doing equivalent units using weighted average. Because we are including the cost of both the beginning and the direct materials, we're going to make an assumption that these were 100% complete during the period. Whether regards it was at 100% or not, but that's what we go through and do. Now we're going to have started and completed. Now, when you look at this question here from Wiley, right, if you take my class, I'll give you started and completed. But over here, it's showing started and ending. So basically started and completed for S&C. This is going to be 660 started minus 25,000 ending. So over here, my started and completed is basically going to be 660 minus 25 or 635. And this is also going to be at 100%. Now over here, and then we have our ending. Now, this is also what's kind of confusing, is because materials are put in at the very beginning of the process. These are going to be 100% complete with respect to materials. So right over here, my total equivalent units for direct materials is going to be 695,000. Now, let's go ahead and take a look over here at our conversion equivalent units. And this is going to be a little bit different. So my beginning, even though it says over here, right over here, even though it says right over here, it says 30% complete as respect to conversion. If we're using weighted average, which is what we're doing in this question, we're going to disregard that 30% and just assume that it was 100% complete during the period. Okay, the started and completed is still going to be at 635. This is also going to be at 100%. But however, though, the ending conversion is going to be a little bit different. We've got 25,000 units, but the conversion, it says that the ending work in process was 40% complete with respect to conversion. So over here, this is going to be 0.4 or 10,000. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. And so, there we go. Okay, so right over here, so my total equivalent units for conversion are going to be 680,000. Now, what we have to do now, we've got the equivalent units down. The next step we're going to go through and do in this question is we're going to figure out, well, how do we get these costs out of the D accounts and into finished goods? So what we have to figure out is what is our cost per equivalent unit. So our total WIP materials is going to be at 1,668. I'm going to divide this by the total equivalent units for direct materials at 695. And so my cost per equivalent unit is going to be at $2.40 over here. So my total WIP conversion, this is going to be 612,000. I'm going to be dividing this by my total equivalent units for conversion of 680,000. And my cost per equivalent unit for conversion is going to be 90 cents. Okay. So we've got this over here. Now we've got our costs. Now, at this point in time, we have two choices. Okay. We can either figure out what our ending work in process should be for conversion and also for materials, or we can figure out what we transferred out. So what did we actually transfer out? Well, if 25,000 was ending, that must mean we transferred out 670,000 units. So over here, I've got 670,000 units times $2.40. This is 670,000 units or equivalent units. I'm going to multiply that by 240. And this over here is going to be heading over to finished goods from direct materials. Okay, so what does that leave me with? Well, this leaves me with over here 60,000. How do I know if I've done this correctly? I always want to check my work. If I take 25,000 equivalent units times $2.40, what do I get? I'm going to get, whoa. I'm going to get 60,000. So I know I did that correctly. Remember, your ending balance has to equal your ending equivalent units, right? Times the cost per equivalent unit. So whatever way you want to go through and do it is entirely up to you. Let's go ahead and take a look at conversion. So we'll start with the ending first. So the ending, we had 10,000 units at 90 cents. Okay, so this is going to be 10,000 equivalent units ending times 90 cents, or 9,000. So what does that mean? What exactly went out? So how much went out? It basically means that over here, we sent out a total of 603,000. So over here for the conversion is right over here. So what does that 603,000 represent? That's going to be 35,000 in beginning, 635,000 started and completed. So this is going to be 670,000 equivalent units, right? Or the 35 plus the 635 times 0.9. So if I take 670,000 times 0.9, I'm going to get 603. Okay. So let's go ahead and see what questions they now want us to answer. So my total work in process is, so my ending finished goods is going to be 2,211,000. Over here, my ending work in process is going to be 69,000. Now, so if I look at my ending WIP for direct materials, ending WIP for conversion, and then we've got finished goods inventory. So this is pretty much what's left in terms of my balance sheet. So this is going to be 9, and then this is going to be 2,211,000. Now, as you kind of saw, the very first thing we did is we said, okay, like, let's add up all the beginning labor overhead, and then like, let's add up the beginning and then the direct materials, and boom. If I add up these three values right here, this again is another way to go through and to check your work. So whatever costs I put in has to equal out the final allocation at the very end of the problem. So let's see what the question's asking us to go through and do. Determine the equivalent units of production of basically the production cost for the assembly department. So my equivalent units of production for materials are 695, for conversion it's 680,000. Determine the assignment of costs that transferred out and in process. Well, transferred out, meaning what went to finished goods, is 2,211,000. What's remaining, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, 69,000, right over here. Okay, prepare a production cost report for the assembly department. I've never done that before. I don't ask my students to do it. I usually will ask my students to say, what is the cost per equivalent unit? What is the, those kinds of things. So let's go ahead and take a look at the solution. So here we have over here. So this is basically, these are the equivalent units for materials and conversion. This is basically the cost per equivalent unit. Total cost to be accounted for. Again, right over here, production cost report. Well, it kind of looks like what we just did in the T accounts, but again, we're in managerial accounting, so there's not going to be and again, it's like, if you're doing this in practice, I'm more concerned with you actually kind of going through and making sure that you understand the concepts behind it, which is really why, again, T accounts are going to be the best way to go. But again, if you like the way a textbook does it, all the power to you. Just make sure you understand what's happening. But again, this visual way of doing it, I think, is a much better way to go. But that's just me, right? You can do whatever you want because it's a free country. There we go. Okay. So I can't have anything controversial in my YouTube videos, right? Or else I have to go through and do that crazy advertiser thing. But anyways, I want to thank Wiley for being with me here today in spirit. And please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're looking for any other solutions, right? please feel free to ask for them in the comments. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great day.